Good. All right, it is 6:01 and I will call the meeting to order. Alicia, would you like to do the roll call, please?
Sure. Lacey Oster. Here. Cherie Link.
Here.
Bruce Belargen.
Here.
Lori Belargen.
Here.
Matt Foucault.
Here.
Marge Below.
Here.
Dr. Busick.
Sometimes.
Our district mission: together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Cherie. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Matt. All in favor?
Do we have to do anything with that late added item? I
Oh,
see it's
yeah,
16.
A separate agenda item was added for that, so it is already added to the agenda. So you could say that you're approving the agenda as amended, if you'd like.
As amended, yes.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We had 2 requests for public comment. You want to start us out? Sure. Thank you.
Okay, we come with presents, Christmas presents. So I am Jen Sutton, the business ed teacher and school store advisor, and I brought 2 students from the class with me. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
I'm Charlotte Eichton, I'm a senior.
I'm Allie Webster, and I'm a senior as well.
They're super excited to be here. They actually are. So we're here twofold. One, to thank you guys and thank our admin and teachers and everyone for, we spend the majority of our time in the school store class, business 2, running around like chickens with our heads cut off, I think is what we would say we do mostly. We've had a lot of support, starting with Shannon and kind of on up and down with having the class look a little bit different and feel a little bit different, the problem solving that the kids do, the work, I mean, just the experience that they're getting running the school store is super cool. And this group has brought it to a new level with everything that we're doing is in-house now. So we're using all of our Fab Lab equipment. Our newest, still hot off the press from Mr. Herrick is using our CNC router. We're heat pressing all of our own items. We've become a wholesaler so we can get really good pricing on items. So we've got a whole array of different things, and these you guys get to pick from. Christmas presents. So here is a thank you for you guys, just for your support, so you can dig through and hopefully find something for you or your kids. And the second reason that I am here is just to a shout out to this group and the risks that they're taking, and to see their passion, just to see the class and the store succeed. We're self-sustaining. We don't cost the district any money technically. We raise all of our own money and then put it back into the school store. So the work that they're doing, the risks that they're taking, the mistakes that they're making, I mean, it's awesome to see. And when they come in every day, it's just turning on the heat press, turning on the laser, turning on, I mean, it's so cool. So I just needed to come and brag about the work that they're doing. The store hours are a little bit crazy. We go week to week, depending on what's home for events. The store is also filled with students who are in cheer and hockey managers and working 3 jobs and whatever. So this on top of everything else, it's really cool to see. So I am so proud of them, and Merry Christmas to you guys. So dig through and find something. I don't know if you have any questions or if you guys want to mention anything. Yeah,
No, we just
pass them
sit and then pass them around.
If you have any questions for the girls or myself.
Do
We
you
put
have
Fab Lab to good use.
Jen, do you have a website that we can get
So
to
we do
the
have a
order
website.
stuff,
We
or
aren't
is it just-
actively selling on the website, but you can look at our items and then reach out to us. But we don't sell online. So the website is linked to our district page. Yep, but we don't sell.
Sell from there?
Yep,
You have
correct.
to come to the actual,
Come to the store or reach out to us. Social media is kind of our free and easy platform that.
reach out to you just, so you have
Email.
the stuff that you're making?
Yep, so you can see items that we're making, and then we have our logos, our different screens that we use, our different, the things that they've created, and then we can put the 2 together. And when our store is open, we take orders if there's something in the store that, you know, a customer doesn't see. So we're actively doing those, and our turnaround has been 3, 4, 5 days, depending on how busy we are, so.
Can you customize as well, so if they have something that they want their name on the back, or?
Yeah, so we're getting better at it. We have a few pages of logos right now, and we would love to get to the point where we can say, let's put a name on it, or, you know, and right now we're sticking to a kind of a Spartan theme, like everything that leaves the store has a Somerset flair to it somehow, but I mean, there's lots of room for, you know, kind of where it could go from here, but, yeah, it's been really cool to see in a few months' time, what this group has done, so it's been really, really exciting. And we've collaborated with the woods department, obviously, with some of the stuff that you look in there and see. Our foods department, we've been a little bit cautious, kind of tiptoeing into offering some things there, just with some of the COVID stuff right now and just health measures. But a lot of measures and a lot of room for like collaboration with other groups, so it's been really cool to see. So, yeah. Cribbage
Can I
board's
see the
coming
cribbage
soon.
board?
What?
Can I see it?
Yeah, so that's not, everything has to be sellable, and we've decided that's not
Not ready yet.
quite there yet, but coming soon, Somerset Spartan cribbage board, so. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Gotta show what we have. There's a lot of youth stuff. We've got coffee mugs. We've got water bottles, coasters made on the laser. We can etch on glass. Email me with questions. This is on our laser. So yeah, Merry Christmas. Hopefully something works.
Can we get that bag back to you tomorrow, so?
No, no. These are gifts.
That's one of the.
Well, you want the bag back, don't you?
No, the bag is also a gift.
Oh.
So, beyond the bag, you don't get everything in it. The bag is also, all that stuff we have for sale in the store.
All
So,
right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you guys.
We had one other request. Thank you.
You've reached Corey. I'll call you back as soon as I can.
At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up.
Can the record show that we attempted to make this call and the person did not answer? All right, then, we will move on to item 5 on the agenda, the spring musical. Is there someone here who's, all right, wonderful.
Ready to go. Hi, everyone. This has been something that we've brought forth annually, kind of what our plans for the drama department are as we review them with Jamie Pelbicki and the various people that have helped out with our drama department over the years. We've typically looked to see what their desires are to offer for the upcoming year. Over the last 2 years, we've gotten to be very good at being flexible and creative to offer opportunities for our kids who are interested in drama. This year, the consensus is that they would like to kind of put more emphasis into doing one larger musical in the spring, kind of in between the winter and spring seasons. Obviously, the practices start in the winter season, but the actual performances would be kind of in that middle spot in between seasons. I have a recommendation on there that we'd like to move forward with. Again, there's no increase to our overall budget. It's more so just reorganizing with what our plans would be for the upcoming year. And I do know that one plan that they would like to do is to showcase and preview this for our elementary and middle schools as well, in an effort to help get kids excited and going with that as well.
Is there a timeline regarding this, that it's necessary to act tonight, or can we bring this back to our regular session?
They would like to get auditions going before the Christmas break if possible, so it's nice to have some of those other pieces in place with advisors and things if possible.
Okay.
But there's nothing different from normal other than just what the names of the positions.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and it's one big production instead of two smaller.
I'll make a motion to approve the spring musical 2022 proposal as presented.
All right, so we have a motion by Bruce. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lacey. Any further discussion? I have a question. Have they revealed what production they're considering?
Yeah, it's Newsies. I don't want to butcher it completely, but yes, Newsies. There's flyers up all over school.
Oh, well then it's not a secret.
It's not a secret.
Okay, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Trent.
Thank you.
And then, Ms. Donnelly, consider early graduation for 3 students?
So you should have received the application materials for the 3 students that are hoping to graduate at the end of the semester. I didn't receive any questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. It's really kind of a formality at this point due to the fact that the senior counselor and I review all the application materials. Obviously, this is dependent on them successfully finishing all the final requirements that they have in semester 1, which we don't have any concerns about. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll make a motion.
Well, this is
No.
information, so we're going to bring this back then
Oh, God, okay.
to the regular session.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
And then Mark, the state report card data
Yeah,
presentation.
start out, first of all, I just, want y'all to welcome Alicia Page, our new executive assistant, and also doubles as board secretary. So she started today with her assistant, Jody.
Jumping right in.
Okay, getting on to item 7 here, we're required to make a presentation to the board of public on report card findings. That's one point of this. The other is, we've talked about this a couple times, the question has come out, where are we at in student achievement? Where are we at so we know where we're going? And hopefully, those questions will be answered tonight, or you can ask these questions. Tricia's gonna kick it off with an overview of the report card, because we have a lot of new people here, and she'll dive into just what the report card is. And then I don't know the batting order, if we're gonna start at the elementary, middle school, and go to the high school. Okay.
Yes.
We'll put 40 minutes down, we'll see where it goes.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, Madam Trish. I'm just meeting a couple board members for the first time. Love to invite you into my office sometime so we can get to know each other a little bit better as well. I handed you, oh, sorry, Mark, here you go.
It's okay, I don't have 10 copies of it, but I'll take another.
I know. Didn't want to kill too many trees. I did. This is just the front page of the district report card. All of these forms, all of these handouts are attached to the presentation. So it's all available for our public to take a look at and for you to follow along. I just thought it would be easier if you had just at least the front page, because most of my part of this presentation is informational, kind of showing you what we get annually and what we are required to do annually, which is to have this kind of a presentation, which is to post our findings. I'm going to speak rather quickly because I know our time was a bit shortened and I want to make sure we have time for everybody. But if you want to know further information or dig a little bit deeper, come on in and we'll sit down together. So right out of the gate, we receive school and district report cards. 3 schools, those 3 schools act as one large school, and that's how they generate the district report card. Every year there's something new. This year there's a great big piece that is brand new. As you know, last year we did not have state assessments, well, not last year, not 2021, but the year prior. And so they are using data that goes back to 17, 18 to generate much of this information. And they made a few changes. So right on the front page of the report card, you're going to see a big exclamation point that really cautions everyone to watch out. Do not dig deep into comparison data, not only from year to year because the metrics have changed, but from district to district because there were so many different testing environments happening, so many factors, so many opt-outs. People did test, didn't test, how they tested. With COVID and what was going on with virtual education and face-to-face and sometimes a little bit of both, this is just a rough year for schools to do any kind of comparisons. So this is on the front page of that report card and is a cautionary statement whenever we talk to CISA or DPI. The other thing that's brand new is a narrative statement on the front page. You'll see at our school level and at our district level. We chose to put a narrative in there. We'll get to that in a second. Target group outcome priority area. This is brand new and this is the big one. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it when we get to that actual piece. They used to have something called closing the gaps, which would help districts identify gaps between different groups of students, and it was very volatile. Some districts had a score, some districts didn't have a score. It had to have 20 people in a cell size. They've changed it now to target group outcomes priority area, where it really looks at the bottom quartile of our students. So those students who are struggling the most or in need of most supports. That is brand new, and we're all digging in to really see who the state has identified and what we're going to do about that. No deductions. So there used to be deductions for dropouts and absenteeism. Those have been removed. A few years ago, they also removed participation rates deductions. So districts would get a -5 if they were not testing all of their students. That was removed as well. So no deductions, but information both in WISE-Public and in our report card. Course and program data in the very last page, you'll see when you scroll all the way to the back, the grades 9 through 12 now post-second now have to report post-secondary preparation and arts programs. Our data is a little wonky there. I think Shannon's going to talk about that later. They pulled data directly from WISE- and had to have CERT or WITE from Infinite Campus. A lot of the codes were a little bit askew. We found this in the entire area. So we've all worked together from St. Croix Falls to Osceola to all around the area to try to figure out what codes are they pulling because it happens tomorrow for next year's report card. There's a link there that takes you to the current report card. If you dig deeper, it takes you to all report cards ever published, and that is available to our public as well. So if you look at the top part of the report card, right at the very top that I gave you, you're going to see our demographics, including our % of open enrollment and that narrative that I referred to. Every one of the schools also wrote a narrative. Had to be under a certain number of characters, and winner goes to Sarah Eichten, who got right to the exact character that she needed for her narrative to get her statement in. Just a little detail there. Student groups is at the top 2, which outlines kind of who we are as Somerset. You're going to see our student groups as well as our students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and English learners. And these are all pulled from the prior year. Score summary is right in the middle. This is a big visual change if you've ever participated in this kind of presentation before. This used to be big and bold and right out there. Now they put it in the middle so that you kind of get a picture of who we are first and then our score. This year, when we look at our whole district as one entire school, our score is 68.7, which means we fall in the category of meets expectations. The cutoff score for exceeds expectations was 70.0. So you see how close that we were to that next level. If you look at the pie graph, the top 2, achievement and growth, that is a variable number based on our students, our economically disadvantaged students. So the higher that number is, the more it leans on growth. The lower that number, the more it leans or weights toward achievement. And the pinch point's about 35%. So we're a little over 26. So you see we have more weight on our achievement scores, on our growth scores. And then 2 other priority areas of target group outcomes, which we'll address, and on track to graduate. So here are the 4 areas that we are looked at across the state and across the school and across the district. Priority area scores are our achievement scores. These are proficiency-based scoring system where students who score proficient in either ELA or math get 1 point. If you exceed, you are 1.5, basic 0.5, and if you are below that, you get 0 points. So you can see for ELA and for math, We exceeded the state in these two areas as far as the district scores go. Proficiency scores are added up, and that's how they come up with that achievement score. Growth. Growth is based on value-added systems, so they try to control or remove all of those components that we can't control, such as a student's background, a student's, if they're economically disadvantaged, if they are a student who is supported with an IEP, and then those students are compared to like students across the state, and they are given a growth score. Are we growing our kids from year to year? The interesting thing about this and about all these scores is, remember, we had no testing in 1920, so they are going back to 17-18 to look at 3 years of growth scores, 17-18, 18-19, 20, and 21, with the biggest emphasis being put on last year. So it's weighted least to most, so the most emphasis being put on the year 2021. And that is how we came out there.
Can I ask a question on that one?
Yeah.
So, just looking at this, just to make it easy, if we had 100 students tested, total, if we had 100 students, 53 of them met what they were supposed to grow to, correct?
That's not how this works.
Okay.
That's a little bit different. I can show you in target scores. In growth scores, what they're doing is they are looking at a 0 to 6 score for each one of the subgroups, with 3 being average. I'm telling you, Bruce, the metrics involved in this are crazy. 3
Yeah,
being average, and then they convert that to a 0 to 100 score.
Does anybody know, how, I mean, does the staff know how this growth score works?
There are detailed pages behind on each one of these. There's a whole page that shows exactly each group and how they fared. So if you are on your computer, you can scroll to page 5 of the district, but it shows exactly each one of the groups, where the average score is, how they did over the last, when they looked at the last 3 years. So yes, we've gone through each one of these pages quite in depth. Everybody nodding their head? With our staff, both from the assessment score level all the way to the report cards. Remember, we got our assessment scores back quite a long time ago, and so we have been digging deep for a long time now. The report cards were most recently released, and that's where they pull it all together to be multiple measures. So yeah, it's all explained back here, but it's not as easy as what you're trying to kind of.
So you said it's a 1 to 6 scale.
0 to 6.
Or 0 to 6.
They look at group to group, 0 to 6, to see how they fared
Does
from
it
the
go
year to
individual
year to year.
student?
It goes group to group, and you have to have 20 kids in the cell size.
So
Before
20
they'll publish.
kids. I mean, you're probably not gonna be able to teach it to me right here tonight.
Nope.
But I
you
mean,
can
does our
come on
staff
in.
understand it though? Because from what I've heard, some of our staff do not understand how this growth
The growth score?
is scored and how it works.
Well, we can get into that a little deeper. Let me keep going, and then we can circle back if we have time. Thank you for that information. We'll have to talk more about that. This is the new one. This is what we're trying to figure out how this works. Because it used to be closing the gaps, right? And you had to have 20 students in a cell size in order for them to look at previous scores and so on. This is something that is brand new. What they did is they looked at the previous year's achievement scores. So in 2021, they looked back to 18-19, and they looked at the bottom quartile of students. So basically your bottom 25%, basically. There's some variability in that for ELA and math of your lowest performing students. And then they throw in any student from our alternative testing who is not proficient, or anyone who does not complete a test and does not get a scale score. So anyone on the ACT who doesn't complete a test, or anyone on the Ford exam or SPIRE that doesn't complete, would not have a scale score, they're thrown in the mix. And at that 25% quartile, they go back again 3 years. So you're looking at growth over time of a group who is struggling, is how they've deemed that. And when they do that, they create a mini report card just for that subgroup. And I'm making this a little bit simplistic, but they do a mini report card looking at achievement, so they get proficiency points on their achievement. They look at growth, how have they done from year to year, and they look at chronic absenteeism and graduation. So the 4 big priority areas for those students. So we have an Excel spreadsheet that would boggle your mind of all the kids in ELA and math over the last 3 years, brand new for us. And what they're trying to do is really promote, what are you doing for this group of students who is really struggling? And by doing this for this 25%, which should be manageable, per school, how will that help impact all student achievement and all growth? So that's where DPI made a great big switch, saying, hone in, focus on this subgroup of a quarter of your kids. What are you going to do to make it better for them and therefore impact the whole system positively? First time we've seen this, we're kind of excited about it. We're all trying to figure out who from last year's in the new subgroup. It's a little crazy, Bruce, because there's a Z-score. And that Z-score is, I don't want to talk about it. But we're doing our best to identify who they are, and we're doing, working to intervene right now in all 4 areas. And then here are the other indicators of success above and beyond as we're preparing students. One is absenteeism, chronic absenteeism, graduation, and then the other 2 big factors are how did we do in 3rd grade language arts? That is an indicator for the district of success. And how do we do in 8th grade math? And that's an indicator for success. So they take these 4, put it all together, and give you your last priority area score. Absenteeism and graduation are a year lagged. So that is not from the year prior, it is from the year prior to that.
That's not last year's 3rd graders?
Yeah, no, it is.
All right.
Yeah. These two right here. They are a year like, just based on when they pull that data. It's a snapshot in time, and so absenteeism and graduation are a year prior. These are last year's test scores, yes. We're
Well,
good.
that's pretty good then.
2 thumbs up, absolutely.
Awesome.
Celebration there.
Nice.
Okay, so my job was to kind of educate you, looking at our district report card, looking at us as all one large school, and then it breaks it down into our individual schools. You have access to their report cards on that link right in this presentation. Don't go deeper than that folder. You'll see there's current one sitting right first level. I'm going to pass this to Pam.
Good evening. How does this work? Is this? Beautiful. So you'll see my narrative right up there, and right out, I want to give a shout out to my leadership team who helped write this, because as Trish said, it was really tricky staying within the number. The number. So you'll see we did a lot of acronyms, SES instead of Somerset Elementary School. So things we would like to celebrate. We were able to maintain our exceeds expectation rating of 76.2. Again, as you'll notice on the report card, it's not bright and colorful, it's black and white, because that's not the biggest thing. When we look at our literacy area, we look back to the 18-19 data, because that's the last data we can compare to for 2021. And if I look at my students that reached benchmark, that were proficient or advanced, we went up 1.1%. And then if I look at my math scores, we went up 2.3% overall. So that's all students tested. They went up 2.3%. This is what we're really excited about too, is our students with disabilities. They went up 3% in literacy and 7% in math from the last previous tested year. And if you notice, we took a dip going from 17-18 to 18-19, and so given what last year was like, we're really glad that we were able to go up and maintain throughout this. Our students with disabilities also grew at the same rate as our students without disabilities in ELA. So our below basic kids went from 53.3% to 26%, and they grew 36.7% to 60.9%. So we wanted to see that growing at the same rate as students without disabilities. So that's kind of test stuff that we celebrate. Other strengths and things that we were doing well. Last year, we kept kids in cohorts, we didn't mix them up, we pushed in, we did a lot of different things to try to help support the needs of kids. And so this year, I'm happy to say we're back to our normal-ish win time, which stands for what I need now. So we sit down, we take all of our students, we assess them, we put them into groups based on their needs. Our gifted students down to our kids that need more advanced interventions, and we put them into groups. This year we've been very able to keep it going. We've been able to progress monitor, we've been able to circle back to data, reassess them, put them in groups to try to be really responsive to what it is that students need. Co-teaching is happening in our classrooms with our special educators, and our interventionists are in identified literacy classrooms every day beyond the win time. We also have, I meet every single week with teams so we can really make sure our pacing is on track. We're working on really those best practices conversations, really being PLCs throughout the week. What's working? How did you teach that? What do you need? Those are kind of things in the system that are working well. And then here's our areas for growth. We're still really working on identifying our priority standards in ELA and math, and really talking about, well, what is our evidence? If we say a student has mastered a standard, what's the evidence that we have that they've mastered that standard? Our really, really highest area is literacy. We have a high area of improvement needed for ELA, and so we have a great ELA committee that's in place, and they're beginning that process of choosing a new curriculum that will be adopted next year, 22-23. We're spending time talking to different publishers and looking at what we need, what are, they talk and look at things, and they go back to their teams, and then they bring it back to the committee, and so we're working on that. And then once we get that, getting that professional development for them. And then also we have 2 math interventions, but really working to how do we make our math instruction be more of a workshop model so that we really can support kids, because we do not have a win time necessarily identified for math. So how do we support our math kiddos with what they need and help math students grow? Any questions about the elementary school?
Does the reading specialist get involved in the ELA?
Yes, and I've been really lucky because she's been joining me kind of in my team meetings each week and kind of bringing her lens into what does she see, and then her and I meet every other week to talk about how we can support through staff meetings and professional development some of the things we see beyond our team meetings.
Because again, I mean, just looking at the numbers, the achievement at the elementary school is above, the other people in the state. I mean, it's pretty decent, but then there's the growth again, so is that?
But if you look, I mean, not that, yep, we made growth, but if you look at our demographics, we really do want to be higher than where we are. I mean, if you look at statistically with our social economic levels and our student, we really want to be higher than where we are.
I agree.
I agree. Any other questions? So I'm passing it on to Sarah. You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. All right, so I included our narrative at the top as well for you to read. It was really nice that we're able to do that because there's a lot that goes into the report card that you don't get to see through the numbers, right? So that narrative is an opportunity for us to talk about all of the other, I hate to use the word things, it's a really bad word, but all of the other pieces that we have in place that help us structure the middle school in the way that it is. And so it gave us an opportunity to talk about not just what we do in the curriculum, but through advisory, through restorative practices, and those other pieces where we're building more than just the academics in our kids. So we have several things to celebrate in the middle school as well. We did maintain our SEEDS expectation rating, which after a year like we had was something that is very much to be celebrated. And looking at when we got to see the draft report card last year based on our 18-19 data and being able to compare it to how we did in 2021 was fantastic to be able to see. Our achievement in the middle school is higher than 80.2% of middle schools across the state, so we really are achieving at a high level, which is excellent, and we were above state average in ELA, math, science, and social studies. And I know science and social studies do not appear on here, but those are 2 other areas that our 8th graders are assessed on. And so I just wanted you to see that as well. In math, where we've put a lot of our efforts over the last few years, the growth that we're seeing in kids is far exceeding typical growth. That 3.0, Bruce, that Trish was explaining to you, it's called value added, and there's a whole metric system. You can go look at UW-Madison and see if you can figure it out, but I'm trusting the math on it. We're getting growth out of kids that are already proficient, and we're getting some bigger growth out of kids that have not been proficient in the past. So that's some really exciting pieces. We're right on the 3 line for ELA, so that's an area that we'll continue to focus on. Our target group, from where we were 18-19 when we didn't have target groups, and they ran a draft of it last spring, to where we were this fall, we went up by like 3 points. So the lowest quartile of kids is growing, which is exciting and what we want them to be doing. And our target group attendance is nearly identical to our non-target group attendance, so it's not playing a factor, right? Kids are still coming to school, and so we want to be sure that while we have them in school, we're focusing on what we can do with them in order to help them learn and grow. And then our on track to graduation is higher than state average in all of the areas, higher than nearly 80% of the middle schools in the state. So that for us, our 8th grade math score gets that double count, as Trish shared with you earlier. And so we're getting our kids ready for that next level, which is fantastic. We do have some areas for growth. Last year, we adopted a new ELA resource for 6th grade through 8th grade. So the middle school is a little bit unique in the fact that it's a 5-8 building because a lot of districts, that 5th grade is still in an elementary school. And so a lot of resources are really built for 5th grade on down, 6th grade on up. So last year when we adopted Study Sync, which is our ELA resource, it's just for 6th through 8th grade. So they've been working through that. That was the first time last year. Found out we had work to do with pacing. We are in a much better spot this year as far as this being our second time through so that we can address those priority standards in ELA, which we are also on year 2 of a revision. The state revised them and they came out last year. As an entire staff, we're focusing on authentic engagement of our students. We know that some kids can just play school well. They're going to do what you tell them to do, and that how can we ensure that they are really engaged so that we are having them learn and grow. And then one of the bigger things that we noticed this year, but it's not new, is our transition to 5th grade. How can we do that better for kids? Historically, our 5th grade scores, if we're just going to look at a test, have been lower. But there are also some other pieces, those pieces that with what we're doing outside of just the academics, we need to do a better job of that. And so that's something that we're looking at as well and hoping to see those changes also have an impact on our students' ability when they learn and grow within the middle school. So going forward, some pieces that are already in place and some plans that we're making going forward. We, like the elementary, have our interventions back at all levels. Multiple. I was able to, I'm going to say, finagle a support staff position, so I have a little additional reading support that I haven't had before, hoping to see some progress and some growth that way. We've got co-teaching going on in math and ELA classrooms across the building. As I said earlier, this is our second year of our 6-8 ELA resource, so our pacing is much more on track. The teachers feel like they have a much better handle because there's this much stuff within the resource we have. And so we have to figure out what is going to get us the most bang for our buck. And so they're really honing in on that this year. So my 5th grade ELA team is sitting with the elementary school as we look at resources. And so we are going through that same process with them. And we will look to then implement that in the 22-23 school year. As an entire staff, we are reading the book Top 20 Teachers and working on a deeper implementation of this during advisory, but not just our advisory in the morning, but also weaving it in throughout the day. No matter what class we're in, when Joe Hutter or I sit down and talk with kids, we utilize Top 20, which is our character ed program. And so we are able to apply it. We're having excellent book discussions at our staff meetings once a month. And then we mesh that with the work that we're doing with restorative practices. So that again gets to build into that whole child just beyond the academic classroom. And then another piece that we are doing is looking at Hattie's work. John Hattie, who's done a lot of research on how do you do and have the highest impact on kids when you're learning. Okay? It starts with teacher self-efficacy and our belief that kids can learn. That really has one of the largest impacts. But as a staff, we're looking at that because so many of my teachers have looked at how can I make sure that our kids are authentically engaged. John Hattie has done a ton of work in that area, so we are really going to hone in on that piece as we go forward for this year. Questions?
Just reiterate what you said. I'm just going back to numbers again, Trish, on your growth for your math. That reiterate to that staff. I mean, that you had 80% growth in that area, from what I understand. I mean, that looks. I mean, you're 15 points higher than the state. I mean, that's a huge number. 80% to me, just from my look, that's 80% of the kids. It's not right, but still, I mean,
it's not.
But still,
you got to look at the other graphs to see percentage of kids. But
whatever.
Yeah,
that's a positive. I just want to make sure we're celebrating with that staff and with the people.
Absolutely.
I mean, and we're not just picking at the negative low numbers or hey, you need to improve here, and nothing with the people that are doing well. So I just reiterate. You already said it, but again, like from us, like that's great, and we want to keep.
Thank you.
That stuff going
forward. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, plenty to cover with the high school. Okay, so looking at kind of our overall report card, right? One of the biggest conversations we've had as a staff is we're using this as our new baseline. After really kind of going through the experience we've had the last year and a half, really kind of getting excited about digging into some of these numbers, which are very different than previous report cards, and really kind of getting tight on monitoring closely a variety of groups of kids, monitoring that growth, which is probably something that obviously to this level we haven't necessarily been required to do before in terms of state assessments, and really using this as the current benchmark. When you look at our achievement, sitting at 61.3, higher than 61.3% of schools in the state, ELA and math scores higher than the state. Looking at our target group, 94% graduation rate, 100% for non-target group. We've always been really proud about our graduation rate, that kids graduate from Somerset High School. And our absenteeism rate as well, which is something we were worried about after last year. And the experience, and I'll talk about that a little bit with Learn Anywhere, but just how things needed to be coded within Infinite Campus. And so actually when this came out as high as it did, we said, oh great, we're gonna grab that as a celebration spot. Again, mentioning on track to graduation, sitting at a high percentage there, absenteeism and graduation, both well above state. So trying to, as much as we can, find some areas on this report card that we can celebrate, because we know that there's a lot of good things happening in our building, and we know this also is going to be a roadmap for, we've seriously got some areas that we need to tackle and address ASAP, okay? So that's gonna be the bulk of what I'm gonna talk about, right? You know, when I opened this up the first day that it was released and I saw meets view expectations, it was like a gut punch. I wasn't necessarily surprised because I had seen the data for months and months and months, so I kind of assumed something similar was going to be coming. But when you see that and then see kind of how close we were to being in the next group, it's like, oh man, we were right there, right? But no one in our building feels good about that. We all take this very personal, doing what we do every day and obviously working with kids. I mean, this isn't something that we have just kind of said, it's COVID, one report card, no big deal. Like, I'll be honest with you, I mean, I haven't slept or eaten in months because this is something that, I mean, this is the driver of what we do, right? And simply trying to get better. So if you look at our report card, obviously the growth is the #1 issue that we need to get a handle on. What is happening when kids are coming into the building as freshmen when it comes to state assessments that year after year, they are not making typical growth, right? So we have engaged in a lot of conversations about what is the why, right? Because I would argue that the data that teachers are pulling in their classrooms doesn't necessarily match what we're seeing here. So something is happening when it comes specifically to state assessments that kids are not performing. So we're having a lot of conversations, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute too, about, as I kind of put there, what is the why, right? Lots of other kids in other high schools are clearly engaging at a high level with state assessments. What is maybe either the intended or unintended messages that we're giving to our kids about state assessments, and how do we change that narrative, right? Looking at target group outcomes, right? We have some target groups, and this is, I guess, a positive and a negative, that are growing at faster rates than our non-target groups. That again is a red flag, right? Something is happening with our students that are coming into the building, or at least maintaining some level of proficiency, and over the course of grades 9, 10, and 11, they're moving the wrong way, right? So that is causing, obviously, as I said, a huge sense of urgency in terms of what's happening in our classrooms and getting kids prepared for state assessments. I put this last bullet point on here because I think it's just an important speaking point. You know, when we kind of talk about, and I know this gets talked about a lot publicly, not just here, but in general, when these things come out, where do you rank, where do you sort, where are you compared to other schools, and those kinds of things. And I talk about this a lot because lots of other schools around us have some resources that I'm going to continue to advocate for that I think are important when we're having discussion about student achievement. When we're talking about instructional coaches, you know, we're the only building right now that doesn't have any interventionists, right, on campus. So looking at how do we kind of leverage resources and figure out something like that. You've heard me talk about my belief in having a full-time assistant principal. None of that's going to get fixed now or by the next time we have a report card, but I want to keep that conversation and narrative going, that if we're going to talk kind of about at any point where we line up with other schools and other districts, that has to be something that's in the conversation, because we currently, in my opinion, are missing some additional resources that doesn't necessarily clarify all of this, so let me just be clear, right? But in terms of we're looking at how to help make this better, I believe there's some entry points there too, okay? So we look at this report card in particular. You know, I know Mark put some information in the weekend update about Learn Anywhere and kind of last year, how that all kind of manifested in our building. I know many, well, at this point, just 2 of you were here last year at that time, but lots of conversations about, right, how do we stay open, let's stay open, and that came at a price. That came at a price instructionally, that came at a price in terms of student engagement. I still believe at the time and at the moment that was the right thing to do for physical health, mental health, keeping the school building open for families to have 2 meals per day, keeping activities and athletics going, which was a high priority for lots of people in the community. But at the end of the day, again, that is not, this is 3 years worth of data, so this isn't, oh, learn anywhere, right? But that has to be a part of our conversation, that we tried something in the moment due to a pandemic, you know, as we've talked about, like, it didn't work in terms of student achievement, right? But in terms of that decision at the time last year, when it was October, of like, we're gonna have to do something or this building is not going to stay open for very long. We had a big celebration at the end of the year about being the only district that stayed open. Lots of things to celebrate there, right? You know, you kind of do, I've done a little bit of the, man, what would have happened if we shut down? If we had a month or 2 months or weeks or whatever that looked like many districts around us did, you know, what would the impact have been? We'll never know, right? But I think we can safely say that that didn't necessarily help our student achievement picture with navigating what we were trying to navigate academically at that time. I mentioned the high opt-out rate. So last year in our building in particular, we were over double the number of kids that we typically have opt out. If you've heard me talk about the report card before, we pride ourselves on, we test all kids. We don't talk kids out of testing. We don't have kind of other things going on where we test all kids. That's the bottom line. Last year we had, as I said, over double the amount of students that opted out. Would that have had some impact here? I have no idea, but that kind of plays into, in my opinion, some of the numbers here. And as I mentioned, just overall student engagement with state assessments last year. We had kids coming in to take the ACT, kids coming in to take the Aspire that hadn't been in the building potentially for months, that had been learning from home for months. And then to sit down and take a 4-hour high rigor test like the ACT, I had kids shutting down, I had kids walking out of rooms. There was all kinds of factors going into last year in particular. As I said, that all kind of mixes together a little bit. In my opinion, it kind of helps tell the narrative of this a little bit. I want to be really clear. My intention is not to stand up here and provide any level of an excuse. This is something obviously that we need to fix, and it will be fixed. But I also feel like it's important to be able to talk about some of these things at the high school in particular. And I won't read all of this necessarily, I'm sure you've read it, but as we look at just above and beyond the pandemic, because obviously lots of schools were navigating a pandemic, but when you put these things all kind of together, we've hit a little bit of a perfect storm in terms of some things that have happened in the building over the course of the last couple of years, right? Anytime you bring on a new master schedule, that is 3 to 5 years of an implementation that's going to take to get it to kind of the maximum level. As you've heard me say before, and I don't care if it's a flex mod or any other schedule, we have had 1 year so far of uninterrupted learning in terms of bringing on a new master schedule. So that kind of extends out that 3 to 5 year timeline a little bit, right? I know Mark put in the weekend update, the document that I put together about staff turnover and looking at, you know, basically how many staff we've had leave in the last couple years. And I want to be clear, it's not because people are jumping ship to area high schools, right? There's lots of factors that are going into why we brought in new people. And many of the people we're bringing in are brand new to education or brand new to their role, which also kind of impacts some of this too. New curriculum for ELA and math. 18-19, if you kind of look back on maybe some of the data that you've been given or some of the data that you've looked up yourself, on our report card was a lower than typical state assessment performance, which we actually had predicted based off of the data picture of that particular class. With the new metrics and things like that, when you have a class with data such as that, that is going to haunt your report card for a while, right? That's kind of the intent, right? And then I also want to talk about this really briefly, and I won't go over each of these slides in particular, but we talk a lot about no assessments in 1920, and for the high school, that's not true, right? In the high school, we were able to get the ACT out, but right before shutdown. Unfortunately, that data was not used in the report card, which I believe would have been very helpful for our data picture. I hear a lot that, you know, the high school data is just doing nothing but downward trend. And I put these in here in particular because I think this again speaks to the narrative of that's just simply not true, right? With our student achievement, are we where we want to be 100%? Absolutely not. And we're doing nothing but trying to get better. But if you simply just look at 1920 for many of these slides, all of those bouncing back from 18-19 in particular, and some of them higher than even the year or previous years, I think helps tell the story a little bit to the fact that it would have been really helpful for this if this data would have been able to be factored in my opinion. Again, I won't go through all of these. You can kind of see where we're at here, right? Again, you'll see on here, certainly math and science. Those are two huge focus areas that we're continuing to work on in the building. Absolutely, you'll hear me talk a little bit more about that. I put these in here because these aren't all sunshine and roses either. But I do think it's important to kind of look at and don't forget about the fact that the high school in 1920 did have state assessment data. So the other thing I put in here, and I'm hoping this is maybe helpful to kind of help tell a little bit of the narrative. Again, some things that aren't necessarily in the report card. Hopefully you could understand kind of what I was trying to do here, but basically it is when these are graduating classes, right? And their ACT composite, when they took the ACT their junior year, and then their final ACT composite by the time they graduated. So again, I won't go through every single metric here, but you can see a high level of growth happening from when kids take the ACT as a junior. There's still a year more of learning that happens in the building. This historically has been information that I have presented to the board at the end of most school years. Last year and the year of the shutdown I didn't, so it's been a little bit since I've done that. But again, if we're just kind of looking at trying to do the best I can to kind of help tell some other pieces of the story that don't necessarily show up here when we talk about student achievement at the high school. All right, so probably the biggest bang for our buck here that you're probably wondering is, great, what are you going to do about all this, right? So the first thing we've done as a staff is we are owning our data. We have been very vocal with each other and have had some very difficult, deep conversations about what are some things that we have to tackle and talk about and really be honest and vulnerable about that are happening in our building. Certainly celebrations, because there's lots and lots of those, absolutely. But owning it and not necessarily making excuses, not saying, well, it was COVID, not saying, you know, all those kinds of things. We're owning it, and as I said, this is our new baseline. Way prior to this coming out, again, knowing what the data was looking like at the end of last year, we made some tweaks to our schedule. We lengthened our mods, and you probably don't remember this, but last year we ended up, right before the school year started, messing a bunch with the mod lengths of our schedule in preparation for having to shut down. I won't bore you with the metrics of all of that, but there was a real specific reason why we were messing with the mod lengths to better prepare our staff to be able to teach from home, which we thought was going to have to happen, and students being able to navigate a schedule in a little bit more consistent fashion. Long story short, we increased to 27 minutes, which means way less success time, previously flex time for our 9th and 10th graders who are very much locked down. Added instructional time for our classes. Again, I won't go through all those numbers for you. You can take a look at that. But we knew that was an important piece of just frankly giving our teachers more time face-to-face with kids. This next one, Spartan Time, is probably one of the most important changes that we've made. We have not necessarily had a dedicated time in the day just for intervention. We were trying it a couple different ways to see if it would work, and it just wasn't giving us the results that we were looking for, or clearly that were working, right? So this is a mod every day where students are scheduled with a teacher during the entire mod. There's no one in a flex space, there's no one anywhere else in the building. Students are getting tier 2 and tier 3 interventions for English and math. Then we have teachers available all throughout the building for kids to be able to get added academic support, reteaching, retaking a test, and the nice thing is there's nothing else happening in the building, so all teachers are available. So teachers have done a great job of requesting kids, hey, I need so-and-so scheduled with me for the next 2 weeks, so they've been gone for quarantine, whatever. And due to the feedback of that from staff and students, we've actually lengthened that time for second semester. We took out 3 days of advisory and traded that time and added it to Spartan Time, so 3 days a week in second semester. That intervention, instead of 27 minutes, will be 50. And we're excited about that, just to be able to get to more kids and be able to have more of that intervention time with kids. We also added Spartan Academy, which is kind of an after-school component, as we've been trying to kind of hold kids more accountable for, frankly, just being students in the building, both academically and behaviorally. So this has really been headed up by Trent, Sarah Collins, Sarah Estes, Zach Eichten. There was a restorative component here, but basically kind of think your updated version of after-school detention, basically, where we're requiring kids, if you're not going to put in some time during the day, then you're going to put in time on your own time type thing.
What, if you're not in one of those interventions, what do you do for that 50 minutes?
You're scheduled with a teacher that students either potentially would request, and we have my inbox is full most weeks of, can you schedule me with this person, this person, this person? So they're either getting academic support. If a kid has just absolutely nothing to do, they read a book. Mm-hmm.
And that's something new just for this, you've
Just started
that
beginning of
wasn't
the
in
year.
past.
Right, yep, brand new. Mm-hmm. But we've already been able to cycle, I should have looked up the number, but close to 100 kids through a wide variety of interventions. The numbers would be way beyond that of kids that have been requested to be seen by teachers. It's been working great. I think they'd all, I'll look at them, there you go, they'd all agree. Okay. Felt it was important to basically give an entire slide dedicated to where we are with our math achievement and growth, okay? This is not necessarily a new topic that I've come to the board about in terms of an area in our building that we know needs immediate attention. The last year and a half has not helped some of this stuff between the shutdown and last year. But again, I'm not going to read all this for you, but you can kind of see we are putting a lot of time, resource, and energy into helping build capacity within our math team and our math teachers. Also kind of looking at some things we're doing for students, increasing the number of screeners that we have per year. We just introduced kids this year, all kids in the building, to really kind of sitting down with their advisory teacher and looking at their data picture. Because I think we were all shocked at how many kids had no idea how they did on the Aspire or how they did on the ACT, potentially. Or when we give these screeners, they take these tests and where does the data go, right? So really having kids kind of buy into, this is your current data picture, right? Because sometimes I will hear kids say if they get put in an intervention, well, I didn't really try my best. Well, then we're trying to kind of get kids to understand the value and importance of why we need you to do your best, right? And kind of what that data picture means for them. As I said, different interventions, those kinds of things, but that list over there, all of those things are new things that we have brought into working with the math team, and some of this with the science team as well, of trying to help build that capacity to get them the support that they need. Okay, almost done here. Whole slide and kind of taking a new approach for ACT and ACT Aspire. I will say last year was the first year that we started doing a practice test for all 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. Our 11th graders this year will take an additional practice test. This has been now moved to January. We're going to offer an ACT prep class during Spartan Time semester 2. For some students that will be optional, for some students that will not be optional. We're doing a boot camp, a full day boot camp in February for all of our kids. In the past, we've had a company come in and do a boot camp that was optional and families had to pay for. This one, we're paying for it and all kids are going to engage in that on a day together. Doing a boot camp for Aspire, surveying our juniors and seniors, trying to get some voice from kids of what do you think might be helpful if you're a junior to help best prepare you to do as well as you can do on this assessment. If you were a senior, did you feel prepared? What do you wish we would have done to better help prepare you? And we've actually been able to receive a ton of really good information from our kids. The last thing I put here is possible incentives. We are, I would say, one of the only schools that doesn't have some sort of incentive program created for students in state assessments. We have had lots of conversations about how we feel about that. Pros and cons, probably. So maybe just stay tuned. We're trying to get a little bit of a feel from kids too of what could those possible incentives look like? Does that fit within the vision of what we're trying to do in the building? So more to come on that, but like I said, we're one of the only schools that doesn't do something like that. Maybe at this point it's worth a try.
What do you mean incentive?
Yep, so for example, if you grow a certain amount from when you took the ACT practice test in November to when you take the actual ACT, you get a day off of school. You get 5 free late passes for homework. You get class incentives, which some schools do. As a class, if you grow this much, you get a day at a Twins game or get a day at the Mall of America. I've heard gift cards. I've heard cash incentives. I've heard, I could send you a laundry list of things that people are doing to try and engage kids because of this, right? Of like, how do you get kids to try to understand that that there's value to this? And I'll tell you that's become more difficult. Can't speak for other schools, but as ACT is becoming more obsolete for college admission, it's begun to get a little bit more difficult for even juniors to buy into why is this important, other than please do well because it reflects well on our report card, right? So those are some examples that, you know, if you show proficiency on the Wisconsin Forward, for example, a certain percent of proficiency, you automatically get an A in civics class. I want to be clear, I'm not saying these are anything that we are or aren't doing, but just things that have been on the table of how do you motivate kids to give it their all. So, all right, my last slide here. These are just some additional things that I felt were important. Our English team has been working with every other team in the building to really bring a building-wide approach to how we're navigating reading and writing in all content areas. This was actually something we started just before the shutdown. Haven't been able to bring it back until this year, so our ELA team has been leading that charge, which has been great. Social studies kind of moved around some of their courses in terms of when students are taking certain classes to better align with the Wisconsin Forward exam. A pretty large revamp of our late work policies, firming up deadlines, those kinds of things. Return of educator effectiveness. So, you know, last year we kind of pushed pause, right, for good reason. This has already been a really valuable tool this year as we're bringing back conversations that we're having with teachers about coaching and feedback and how we grow together and get better. Our high reliability schools work, which has really kind of produced some great documents and some great guiding conversations in our building about how do we just get better at what we do. And then Trish kind of alluded to this a little bit. You know, if you go way back to these back 2 pages, although it doesn't impact our score necessarily, the information there kind of helps tell the story of what's happening at your high school, right? So Jess Wink, Kelly Emerson, Jason Hamari have been working for weeks and weeks and weeks to get ready for the snapshot poll that's tomorrow, and going through literally hundreds and hundreds of state codes and matching them up to courses and matching them up to student pathways and I mean, just you couldn't imagine how complex it has now become. And so when we pull this now, I actually wish we could re-pull it for this one, because the back couple pages are going to look much more accurate in terms of what's happening in our buildings. As Trish said, in talking to some of the other principals, it was a very common that the data on the back was a little bit misaligned. Ours was as well. So trying to just get some better processors for that for our state reporting. So kind of a lot of info, but we've got a lot of work to do. As I said, I've never had an intention of standing up here and saying, well, it was COVID, oh well, we're moving on. I mean, this is, like I said, we take this really personal. We don't feel good about where we are right now. We feel good about lots of things that are happening and lots of the action steps that we have taken to try to help get this back on track. Do I think this is all going to be fully fixed by March 8th when we take the next ACT? No, but our mantra has been every day we're going to get 1% better. What's happening in your classrooms that was better than the day before? What's happening in your team conversations that's better than the day before? And how do we just keep getting better? So, questions?
I have a question, sorry.
Oh.
You had mentioned the high opt-out rate.
Yep.
Does that, and maybe this is more for Trish, does that affect, I mean, I know that those numbers aren't included then within. Is that the way you're looking at it affecting, or does it affect negatively towards scores? I know there are some state testing that, like, if a kid opts out, it reflects negatively.
No, in the past it did. If
Okay.
you had a below, I forget, 95%?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
We would get a -5 points. And that was something that all districts kind of watched like,
Right.
Now, no. It
Okay.
does count towards some of our federal accountability measures that we will see come out soon. But for this state report card, no. Kids can opt out, and it can impact us positively, negatively. Just, there is an impact on our scores and the validity of our scores, but not any deductions.
Can I just give you a good example,
Yeah.
right? So like last year, I'm not sure this student wouldn't mind, but last year I had a student that had taken the ACT twice before the actual state test date, 27-27. So the state test date came and, dude, yes, let's do it. He's like, I've taken it twice already. I'm already in my college. I don't need to take another 4-hour test again, right? I don't know, would a 27 have put us over the edge, right? I don't know. But that's what I mean by our opt-out rate potentially impacting one way or the other, but if that helps.
And to be clear, it's the parent's choice to
Yep.
opt out.
Yep.
And the school can't do anything about it.
Yep.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
So there was a ton of information, and I'm sure that people will be thinking about this for a while, and so perhaps you could expect some questions in the future after people have had time to think about it. Mark and Ryan, would you like to follow that?
No. I think we just had our health update. I asked Ryan to come just give a little bit from his perception of where we're sitting right now. If you recall last year, this was our really trying time between Thanksgiving and Christmas. You know, learning from what we went through last year and some of the options that are available to us. You know, we just got to watch this really closely. So Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, so just kind of starting off like last time, just going to go over an overview of our numbers currently. So this was as of 4:30 today. Currently have 18 students positive and 3 staff positive. This is still trickling over through Thanksgiving. So a lot of these students who have tested positive have not been in school for a little while. They've been out of school since before the break. Only now we're starting to get those students who are kind of coming back, testing positive, and kind of being here during their infectious period. Looking at this, currently 18 students out in close contact and 2 staff out in close contact. Currently at a total of 200 total this year of positive individuals that we've seen since the start of the school year. And then just broken down by building, currently we're all about at the same level through each building, obviously except at the JK and the DO, but roughly around that 50-60 mark per building of staff and students who have tested positive so far this year up to this point. And again, this breaks it down week by week of number of students who have tested positive each week. As you can see, we did kind of have a big jump there at the 31, 37. That was kind of around before the shutdown, right before Thanksgiving break. That 9 drop down there was the week going into Thanksgiving break. So 2 weeks ago, we didn't have that high of cases. But obviously, as we came back from the break, we did see another spike of 20 last week. And then this week, currently at 3 cases. And then again, this just goes over the transmission data that I've been collecting over the year, or the school year. So currently have 27 staff who have tested positive overall, and then 173 students who have tested positive. Again, the transmission rate in the schools is at about 4%. So all students who have been identified as close contacts, about 4% of those students have tested positive within the school. And then sitting at about 35% of students who are close contacts in the household testing positive from that. And then kind of jumping into the main category here of what we want to discuss tonight. Again, we talked about it last board meeting about potentially bringing in COVID testing to our school district. Again, this is a federally funded program at no cost to us. They would bring in a vendor who would kind of set up shop here on the district campus and then allow staff, students, and their immediate families to kind of get tested whenever they would want to. And again, it's completely optional. No students will be required to get tested at all for any reason. This is just another resource for student, staff, and family members to get tested, as we know that testing sites are kind of scarce right now with the number of appointments available. And again, we offer the antigen testing, which is the rapid test, which comes back in about 15-30 minutes. So let's say a student wants to go get tested just to see if they are positive before school or something like that. You'd get your results back before the school day started. And then parents could decide, hey, I will send my student based on those tests and those symptoms. And then obviously the PCR tests, which are the more accurate tests, may take up to 1 to 3 days. And again, it's for staff, student, immediate household family members who would be available to get tested on campus. So we would make that available to all those. Mark and I kind of discussed, we would kind of set up shop here at the DO along in the back there. Again, not as much cross traffic as we have the opening door over there and the JK kind of over here on their own. And then hours of operation would be to be decided depending on when we'd want to open it up to those who could get tested. And then how you get tested, again, you would need to sign a consent form. And then once you fill out the consent form, we do file it for you in your student file or in your staff file. If you're a parent or a family member, kind of just keep that on hand and we can file that for you if needed. But again, we would just file that for you. On the day that you want to get tested, we would just pull that consent form out and say, hey, we have it here. And then prior to getting tested, we would just call with a verbal consent to parents to make sure that, hey, this consent form was signed here. And hey, parents, I do want to get tested or get my child tested on this day with your verbal consent as well. And then again, just to register, go through the process of COVID Connect is the way that they've been kind of setting it up. We receive that QR code and then go to the testing site. They'll scan your code and then you should be able to get tested right then and there. For students who are opting to get tested during the day, they would just be escorted down by the healthcare provider in each building. That way we're not just sending students off on their own to hopefully try to find a location over here. And then this is the consent form kind of created by us and with COVID Connect. They kind of sent us a draft of what theirs have been sent out to other schools. So we kind of just geared it towards ours. Each of these links kind of just goes over, if you click on them, how to register, some questions that might be asked about the clinic, and then just a flyer to kind of go over the general what COVID Clinic is and what it's offering. And then for results of the test, again, all test results, whether positive or negative, would come to me, just so I can verify, hey, you're tested positive, hey, you tested negative, you're good to go. And then those who tested positive, those results are sent over to the state, the local health department, to the families, and to me. And then we can kind of do next steps there on the quarantine process and kind of those dates of return. As far as family members who have tested positive, that's kind of up to your guys' employers. I mean, we'll kind of give you a general outline of, hey, this is how long you should quarantine for. But again, those positive test results will be followed up by the state and through the local health department. And then negative test results, they won't be sent to the state, they'll just be sent to me and directly to the family members. And then we can kind of check you guys off the list and say, hey, you guys are good to return with that. Again, even with the negative test result, symptoms permitting, obviously you're throwing up and you still want to get tested, but you're still throwing up, obviously you're not going to return to class. But again, if you have a mild cough, just like a baseline cough, and we just kind of want to rule it out for family members, that is an option available. A little less stress for some of our staff who kind of are curious, hey, I know this student in my classroom has been coughing a lot lately. Hey, they tested negative. This is just kind of their baseline throughout the season with their allergies or what have you. That's just kind of a reassuring aspect that we can have for those staff and those students. And then obviously if test results come back positive, we run through that quarantine process again. Again, that time frame of when we would bring this in, once we do the AOK, it would take about 3 weeks for them to kind of set up shop here. So kind of looking towards after Christmas break, if we did go through with it now, just with the time frame. Again, I'd be reconnecting with COVID Clinic just to say, hey, what do you guys need from us kind of moving forward here? And then obviously with the AOK, just sending out the information presented in these slides with the links to families and staff. And then just some feedback I've been getting. New Richmond recently started theirs last week. So they run the exact same COVID clinic that we would be running. And I talked to the district nurse over there last week. Things have been going well for them. I haven't heard any negative feedback as far as from staff, from students, and parents that they have been notified about. Overall, it's been going well. Spring Valley School District has also been doing this since the start of the year for their school. And again, talking with their district nurse, sounds like everything has been going pretty well for them over in Spring Valley in regards to on-site testing. And so with that, opening up to questions that you guys might have.
You talked about consent, so if a student, let's say elementary student, sneezing, coughing, are they suggested to go get tested? Are you checking if they're tested? Are you calling parents? What's changing from what happens today?
Yeah, so typically students who come in, we do the assessment depending on the healthcare provider. So elementary school's got theirs, middle school's got theirs, high school's got me. So we usually do an assessment of symptoms. If you guys fall into the categories of these many symptoms, we typically do a phone call home to parents, say, hey, It's just kind of what's going on in the classroom. Hey, is this their baseline or not? If it's not their baseline, kind of next steps of what we'd like you to do. If they're constantly coughing, causing a disruption to their learning in the classroom, causing disruption to kind of staff and students with concerns, then we say, hey, please come pick up your child. There's just concerns with some symptoms going on. Again, we haven't been requiring testing, so again, please stay home until you're doing better. And then again, you don't need to be completely symptom-free, symptom improvement, and then no fever for 24 hours after that.
Yep, so let's say they go home, let's say parents say, okay, well, they go home, next day they come to school, they're coughing again.
Yep.
If we have this COVID testing on site,
Mhm.
are we more apt to send kids home, to contact parents, to push them to get tested, because it's right here, as opposed to
Yeah.
today?
Mhm.
Today, we don't have that,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, so that's
I think we have a site we suddenly have a site here. I'm afraid that we're gonna be more apt to say, oh, symptom, go get tested. And I guess, tell me that that's not the case, that's not what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job of it so far this year. Students who have been sent home typically are out a couple of days just because of the symptoms they were having. We get a call the next day say, hey, Jimmy's still not feeling well today since you sent him home yesterday. We'll reevaluate tomorrow. So parents, families have been doing a pretty good job of that this year. Obviously, some slip through the cracks and come back again the next day, same exact symptoms. We're notified by the teachers. Again, we have been calling again, say, hey, I know we sent them out yesterday, still not feeling well. Please come pick them up. And then again, just assessing that baseline of, hey, maybe this is just the allergies that you've been describing all year. We'll check their file. If it's on their file, great. But again, if it's causing a disruption to their classroom learning or causing a concern to staff and students, we're saying, hey, Jimmy's been coughing over here again for like 30 minutes, nonstop. Just some more cause for concern, and then asking parents to say, hey, can you please set up a test? I know there's not one available for the next 3 days over here, but again, just a recommendation. This way they have quick, easy access to say, hey, okay, fine, I'll take my student to get tested. Boom, they come back negative. Their baseline is set there then. Again, you can get tested as many times as you like if you want to get tested tomorrow. And then again, the next day, just to kind of keep reiterating that, hey, I'm fine. That would just be an option for.
So are you, sorry, I have a couple questions. Are you suggesting currently to parents, if you call home, hey, you should go get tested? Is that a suggestion that's currently taking place?
It's always a recommendation, but again, you're not required to. I'm not going to fault you for saying, hey, I don't want to get tested. I'm just going to wait a couple days.
Okay, so having a COVID clinic on site, is there going to be an expectation that you produce a negative test result? Because, well, you could get tested, therefore, it's expected you get your kid tested.
So there is no expectation to get tested.
And there won't be?
Yep, nope, there won't be. It's still just a community resource to say, hey, if you want to get tested, you can. You're not required to get tested in order to come back to school tomorrow.
I think a lot of the conversations that we have with parents now, I mean, I feel them a lot too. They have already decided to get their child tested. They're asking us like, where can we even go, right? This will just be one of those things on the list, like here's an option for you to go to get tested. It would never be like, you need to get them tested. They're often asking us like, you can't get them in anywhere, it's gonna be a week, right? Even with staff, I'm sure Ryan is getting questions and principals are, where can we even go to get tested? Is gonna let us back in the building again if we're negative, right? So this is just an option versus, it's never a you have to do, this is just another option.
That's what we look at it as it's a service to the community because, you know, believe it or not, you know, a lot of our people do not have the wherewithal to be dragging kids to clinics and doctors and what have you. And time off for staff to line up tests and miss you know, instructional time, it's a convenience offered. And if we set it up for like a Tuesday and Thursday, you know, here it is. Come use it. It's not going to cost us anything. I think we got a very secure area back here where we can do that. You know, and if these kids are running around buildings that are infected anyway, I mean, it's, you know, they're here. So let's deal with them. You know, if they want to pursue this opportunity, I totally look at it as just a community service and a service to our staff.
Yeah, and I hear your point, Matt, where you don't want the health person or a teacher to say, let's get rid of that many more kids because it's just right here, just pushing more kids out that much quicker. And that's what you were kind of saying, that you just don't want to red flag everyone even.
Yeah, I would like just to know that that's not what's going to take place, because I'm a little afraid that that's suddenly there's an expectation that you can get tested, you should have a negative result, because it's right here, and I'm afraid of that. My other question then is, okay, so this sets up shop in 3 weeks, until when? Is this till the end of school year? Is this until the end of time? Like, when does this go until?
Yeah, so there's no exactly set date for the end of it. It's just kind of as we keep evaluating. If we find out, hey, later on in March, there's been 0 cases for a month, maybe we don't need this anymore. Easy enough to pack it up. From what I've been understanding from COVID clinic, it's just if we need them, they'll be here for us. If we don't need them, it's easy enough for them to say, all right, I think things are looking good, moving forward. If you guys need us to come back, we can always come back because you guys are already here on our radar. So as far as I understand, there's no for sure end date for this. It's just kind of a evaluation process of what we need.
Very situational, just like everything we've been through. We just kind of monitor where we're at, and even though they're closed down and what have you, it's how is it affecting us? Where's it coming from? What's the best course of action? And so far, it's worked fairly well for us. But again, you know, this thing's changing course every day. You know, with all this new stuff coming out and what have you. Again, the community service for families and staff.
So if we made a motion for this now, it probably wouldn't be enacted until after the first of the year anyway?
Probably,
right?
just with the break and everything, it'd be no real hurry for that.
So to clarify, if you've got siblings in the schools, one tests positive, are you going to require the other sibling to come in and get tested even with no symptoms?
Again, it would fall on the quarantine process. Typically, household members would have to quarantine unless they're fully vaccinated. That's kind of been our policy all year into last year. So just following that quarantine process of, hey, I tested positive, sitting here, vaccinated or not vaccinated, what do I need to do now? And we kind of go through that every day, so it's nothing really new to us, depending on who tests positive or not.
But you wouldn't have to get tested?
You wouldn't have to get tested. Again, we still have the option of the 7-day quarantine option, which if you want to get tested and come back as soon as possible, that option is there. If you don't want to get tested, you quarantine from 10 days from the last date of contact with the positive case.
I think it would be a huge benefit for the staff and families to do that, because just working at a clinic, I know how busy that we are doing COVID testing and seeing COVID patients and stuff. And they can go sit in urgent care for 3 or 4 hours and wait for a test, you know. So I think it would really be a benefit.
Another question?
Okay, go ahead.
Just speaking to Cherie's question there, so if I sign a consent for one of my students, what does that do to the other 2? If I have, the one I signed for is positive, what happens to the other 2 that don't have consent? So they asked to test, are they asked to quarantine, are they at school?
Yeah, so in order to get tested, you have to fill out the consent form. So if you just fill it out for student A, but not student B or C, they can't get tested until you fill out the consent form.
But with a positive test in the district's hands, are they out of school?
Yes, because that's just the quarantine guideline.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter about the
Yeah,
consent at this time.
But as of today, if student A was tested at a clinic and parents had a positive test, if they kept their kids apart, the other kids could come to school because nobody would ever know, correct?
It comes back to just an honesty policy then. Like,
It's
hey,
an honesty policy, exactly. But I'm saying, with the district having control of that information, those kids are out.
Yep.
But Ryan, don't you have access to the state data anyway?
In terms of who is tested positive?
Yes.
So we have a connection with the local health department, so we can confirm cases positive or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they follow up on the cases, the local health department does.
Yeah, so we're notified every time
They
there's a
have to be
positive case
notified.
from the health department.
So even if the
Yeah.
parents didn't tell, the health department would notify the school.
And again, these positive cases, if you test positive, they go straight to the health department and to the state. So they might notify us, but again, if it's coming through our clinic anyways, we're probably already notified. So just one less step for them too, to kind of notify us.
Are you seeing kids, and maybe, are you seeing kids and staff missing school because they're waiting for a test?
Yes, constantly.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, again, we have a spreadsheet between each building of students pending tests. If we notice that student's not back, I usually give them a call and say, hey, have test results come back yet? They say no. The clinic said 1 to 3 days. And so they're still waiting on those test results to come back, which kind of just continues to keep them out of school even longer.
And it can take, I've tried to go on a site to get a test, and they're out like 3 or 4 or 5 days.
So if the 10 to 15 minute one comes back positive and then the PCR comes back a few days later negative and they have no symptoms, are they back in school?
Yep, they're back in
In
school.
addition to any other siblings?
Correct. Yep.
Sorry, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
2 questions actually. So one of the things that was mentioned in your presentation was escorted from building healthcare provider to test location. Can you just clarify that? Because I feel like if a parent needs to give consent, both in writing and verbally, then how would something like that work?
In terms of the little transportation.
Well, because if
Consent's on
yeah,
the
if
record,
you're-
just you do the consent right away on the
Yep.
record, like you would
Verbally.
say, yep, you
Okay.
would say, yep, if the event comes up and my child needs to be tested, I get consent for them to be able to.
So they
get
would
it.
give consent prior? Okay,
Yes.
and that's what
Yes.
that's what I
Yeah.
needed. 'cause
So we
it
have the
said
consent form in their file, and then I'll call
In their
you.
file and verbal, so
Yeah.
it would be prior to them meeting.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And then my third question, sorry, was the dates and times. Is that something that you guys could
Yep.
just decide? Because I
Yep.
feel like that's, like, could it be on the weekends?
That's completely up to us. If we want them here 7 days a week, we can have them 7 days a week. So it's really up to us as a district, how often we want them to keep open. I know in Richmond, they run Monday through Friday, 7 to 4:30. So if we wanted to kind of backtrack on them, we could do that too. But it's up to us on how we want to set that.
No, that was just, well, I mean, that's where I think, as Marge, you're saying, like, with those numbers, I mean, that Saturday, Sunday, some of those times are the busiest times. I mean, honestly, if this was something, I'd almost like to see it, like, some of those busier times that be unavailable versus like, oh, during school hours where we're gonna just keep bringing kids over. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
So you're saying it might be more beneficial to have it in the evening and on weekends?
Well, and I know that teachers need to get tested. I mean, I've gotten feedback, because I've gotten emails on both sides of this, so I want to be very open as far as both that input. But I think some of that is those really busy times, like the weekends. I was there. I was the mom that sat there for 3 hours because of that piece, and I get that. But then I don't want to, when it's kind of escorting from buildings when they're in school and coming over, it gets sticky too. So I just want to have that discussion, I guess.
Would we be able to get data on a monthly basis, knowing how many kids are getting tested? So back to Matt's point, so can, in 3 months from now, you're saying, yep, 2 kids got tested
Yep.
in the last week. And so we can say, okay, time to shut this down.
Yeah,
because
so we
it's no
keep
longer
the
an
data.
issue.
I mean, I
So
get
you'll
the test
have-
results, easy enough for me to just track who got tested and what the test results were, so.
Does anyone want to make a motion tonight?
I was just looking at that, especially when you said it takes 3 weeks to implement. I would love to have a motion tonight instead of waiting until the regular session. Is that, how does the rest of the board feel?
Yeah.
You make a motion, feel free.
Yeah.
All right, so Bruce, did you want to make a motion?
Sure, Lori, I'll make a motion to approve an on-site testing clinic, I guess, is that what we're calling it?
Yeah.
On-site COVID testing. Yeah, is that enough?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Marge. Is there further discussion or questions?
I'd like to just, like Sheree to her point, I'd like to see information coming to us, how this is being used. To Lacey's point, solidify the hours, because I agree, you know, your kid tests positive or, you know, they're exposed, you'd want to get tested yourself. I mean, be able to come home after work and do it, not just during the day. I mean, getting those hours maybe a little set, talk to them and see what works. I think would be helpful. Or maybe, again, we asked a survey last time, kind of survey what people thought. Maybe that's something too of, hey, planning on doing this, what hours would you recommend? Would you use it, so we kind of know?
Yep.
And then to clarify, this is just for students and immediate family. This isn't community
Correct,
members,
yep.
correct?
It separates us from being a community testing site, so strictly just for,
So to be clear, like this isn't community, this isn't
Correct.
grandparents
Yep.
of, this isn't
Yep.
excess households, this is just,
So Uncle Bob, 2 cities down, couldn't come over and get tested, even though he has a nephew here.
this is just in the,
Yep.
Student, immediate family of students and staff.
But you control all that data, every result you get.
Yep.
Okay.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, Alicia, I would like to do a roll call vote on this.
Okay.
So, Marge, how would you vote?
Yes.
Matt?
No.
Myself, yes.
yes.
No.
Really?
Sorry.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 4-2. Thank you.
Can I just ask something? I was really, really on the fence with this because I have said time and time again, I want to listen to our community and listen to people. I really want to be transparent that this is a resource and that this is a resource for our community. It is not required or even recommended. It's there as someone to be able to utilize.
Yeah,
But under the control of the district. That's all, just put that on record.
I mean, yeah.
very clear on Matt's points, we're not, shouldn't be any.
And as Cherie said, to reevaluate like
Yep.
monthly, because I know that even at a parent meeting a couple summers ago, when Matt had made that point there at the elementary school, like, we're putting these things in place, and I want to make sure that this isn't something that just stays, that we're then, okay, we can stop that now, we can keep moving back to normal.
Well, I don't think the funding is going to go on beyond.
Well, I don't think we're gonna need a COVID testing site for the next 2 years, hopefully.
Well, hopefully not, but look what's happening.
So can I just ask a quick question then? So how quickly, so this is approved, how quickly are you gonna get these, this waiver out? Like what's the communication to the district families?
Yeah.
When can they expect to see something so they know, do they sign it or do they not sign it? They
Yeah.
need to know exactly what they do if they do not want to test or if they do want to test.
Yep, so I still have to get in touch with COVID Clinic again to say, hey, we did get approval for this, we're going through with it, finalize some details. Before Christmas break, I mean, for sure, we'll get something sent out. That way, if we do set up, again, right after we get back, we can kind of get things in motion right away. So
I just don't want any questions. I want people to know exactly what they have to do. If they want in or if they don't, no matter what it is, just so it's clear.
Yep.
Well, if they don't want in, they don't have to do anything.
As long as they understand that, that's all. That they don't have to sign.
They don't have to
wait.
check a no, they
Yes,
don't have to,
that's-
that's, they're,
It needs to be clear.
Keep doing what you're doing.
and maybe too, just, it goes out in the email, not just in the scoop, like it goes out in an Infinite Campus email, or just some type of email, you know, to parents so they can understand it.
Yep.
This will be a
It's clear.
significant thing in the community, there's no question. So it needs to be transparent, it needs to be
Well, they
clear,
are.
no matter what people think.
They aren't being forced to do anything.
Exactly, as long as they
This
understand
is a
that.
benefit.
As long as they understand that, that's all. That's
Yep.
all I'm asking for. Absolutely. Those that want to participate, by all means, of course. You don't need to shake your head. This is a public, what's that?
I said I am because you
Because
don't seem
why?
to
This is a
understand
public
it's a
meeting.
benefit. It's not
Absolutely.
a
For-
forced thing to do.
For those that want to participate,
Like
this is
you.
absolutely a good thing. Yep. But this is public education, and we just spent 45 minutes talking about the district report card. And then we spend almost the same amount of time talking about COVID testing. And I'm sorry, but I draw the line, and I think that there are benefits And there is a difference in what we focus on as board. And I don't need my fellow board member shaking her head at me while I'm speaking, because I do have my opinions. And I don't need an eye roll.
That's
No,
enough.
Lori, hang on,
That's
hang on.
enough.
I don't need an eye roll.
That's enough.
I have my
Let's
opinion,
go
and you
on
have yours.
We are going on to the next
Item
topic.
number 9, the open board position discussion. Please, Mark.
Okay, under this item, we have two things. I put a separate note out to you about the CPACs, I'm going to say vaccinated, vacated by Roxanne. You know, we need a clerk, and we need a clerk as soon as we can get one from you folks here. And then also a process of filling Roxanne's seat. And I laid out a couple of things in that note with our board policies and what have you, so it's really, what do you want to do?
I'll make a motion to have Matt be the clerk. Can we do that? Or we're voting, right? I'm gonna do
Well,
that, so I nominate Matt as the board clerk.
I second that.
All right,
I'm trying.
so we have a nomination on the table. Is there any other nominations for clerk?
You okay with that, Matt?
Does Matt want to do it?
Sure. If nobody else wants it, somebody's gotta do it.
All right, then, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Matt, you are our new board clerk.
Okay.
Good luck.
I'll need some training on that.
We'll figure, just get your signature hand ready.
I'll get you a stamp for Christmas. Can we make a stamp, Jen?
Yes, there you go.
We do have the resources. 3 quick ones.
Okay, process for filling the seat.
Mark and I have gone over our policy in the state statute, and we've discussed how we've done school board elections in the past. At the last spring election, anyone who applied was given 4 or 5 questions. Mark sent those out in an email. So our recommendation is that we open it up to applications for a certain amount of time, so we need to discuss how long you want the application timeline to be. And then we have them answer those questions. The same questions, Lacey, that you answered before. And then, when the application process is closed, it will come back to the board with the people who applied and their responses to those questions. And then we would have an opportunity to interview them if we had any follow-up questions for them, or would like more details about anything. And then we need to vote on who we would like to take that position. And I believe when we've done this in the past, each board member is given a piece of paper and they write the name of the person on it, and it would be Alicia, sorry, who would have to go through the papers and put how many votes each person got until we got it narrowed down to 1. Bruce, you went through this process.
Yeah. No.
It's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, it's gonna be better than that, because we understand math. So, is this the 10th that we're gonna be doing this? The January, or not? Is
Well,
the-
we need to discuss how long.
You know,
Today's
maybe
the
with a
6th.
process, if you agree
Is
with the
that
process, if we
the
put out,
January meeting?
open it up
10th.
to all our lines of communication, that's what we have to do the best we can to advertise. Let's just say you leave it open until sometime before the next board meeting, you get all the applications, and then depending on how many applications you get and how many you want to interview, then you could say, well, let's do it on this evening, or let's take a Saturday, or, you know, who knows if you're gonna get 3 or you're gonna get 10. You know, but once you have them, then you can make that decision on when and how you wanna do the interviews. So we could open it up tomorrow, we could get this out. And let's just say we require all the information back by next Friday or somewhere in that, in the next week. And then at the next meeting, the 20th, you can determine, okay, we've got this many applicants and here's what we like that. And you'll have the information about them too.
And
And
then
then-
that 20th meeting, then we can decide when we want the interviews to happen, so it wouldn't happen on the 20th. We would have a special session. We could do it another evening, we could do
Yeah.
it
I guess
on
that
a
was my
weekend.
point, is we go 3 weeks there, because I think it's the 10th is the next work session, because I don't think we have a
Yes.
meeting the 3rd, so.
So
you guys
between
see them
there, you could have
in
those
before the
interviews.
10th.
You can have that person on by the
Well, I think what Mark was suggesting is that we close the application process by Friday the 17th, is that correct?
Yeah, unless you want to speed it up.
So then we would have all the information by the 20th, and on the 20th, we could discuss when we'd like to move forward with the process.
I like that.
Does that sound reasonable, Lacey? Sheree?
Okay, we'll put on a motion, we'll get it out tomorrow.
One more time. Opens tomorrow.
It would open tomorrow. We would accept applications until Friday, the 17th, at the end of the business day, which is what time, Mark?
On a Friday, probably 3:30, let's just say 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock on Friday, December 17th. The board will receive the compiled information by the Monday, the 20th meeting. And at the 20th meeting, we'll need to have an item on the agenda about discussing how we're going to move forward with the process.
Is there a time you need it on that Monday, so you see it before, I mean, that's a lot if she gets it Friday at 4, just so we know time for you, you know, because then she's done at 4. Monday morning to compile it and get it out to the board, how much time do you guys just?
I think it's just timing, because I think it's trying to figure out if you have 10 people, or if you, like Mark said, you have 1, or
Okay.
maybe just evaluate.
And you
I don't know
just
how
move
much
it up
you
to the
need.
16th on Thursday, then she'll have plenty of time to
Thursday,
compile
the
everything.
Monday.
Let's just say it's 16th.
Okay,
End of business on the 16th.
so that would be 4 o'clock again?
Yep.
All right? And then we would have the data by
Friday.
noon on Monday?
I mean, we'll probably have almost 99% of it before that, but you gotta wait till the end, see if there's 1 or 2.
Okay.
When is the other stuff due for the re-applicants? Or the people who want to apply for the actual job, actual position?
Oh, if you want to run for school board in April, you have to fill out the paperwork by, I think it's January 4th.
Oh. So this is an
And if
appointment
you
until
are
April.
a board member who is up for reelection in this term, you are required by state statute to file by a certain date, whether you are intending to run or whether you are not.
So I think Matt and Lacey's is due sooner.
If
If you
not,
want-
it's the 20th.
Okay,
It's-
that's.
Or
right.
it's the 4th.
You should have sent out all that information.
Yes.
Oh, okay, you got it, okay.
Okay.
I'd say that, but depending on the 2 dates and.
Because that Roxanne's seat is up in April?
No, it was not.
No,
It will not be, okay.
But it will be.
It will be.
It will be now.
But it
So
wasn't supposed
there'll
to
be
be.
3 seats.
Got it, okay. It will be now.
It'll be a 1-year position.
Got it.
Do we have to make a motion or anything, or we're just good?
No, this doesn't
getting by
take
the
any
16th?
action, just determine the process.
Okay, so we are done with the open board position. The next item is the district-wide sub-update.
Yeah, Jody sent out some information as far as dollars on that. We do have one qualified application. I think the principals have reviewed that person, and they, you know, it is someone viable. So.
Somebody that they'd like to hire?
That, we would consider interviewing.
Yeah.
So let's go that way.
I'm still on vaccinations. So we're very fortunate to have someone. We didn't think, the odds of finding people. So we want to move forward with this. Is there interest in keeping it open for a second?
Let's go with one, and then let's talk about, can we talk about rate tonight too?
Sure.
Is that part of this discussion?
I think that was, you sent out information.
Jody sent that out, and then her and the HR part.
Not rate, no, rate for teachers covering, I guess.
Oh, no, I haven't brought anything back from that yet, as far as using their preps.
Yeah, instead of whatever they're
Right, I haven't
making now.
done
covering-
anything, Dave and I haven't had a discussion on that. And you know the intent of what I was saying about increasing that rate.
Right, no, I agree.
Yeah, but I
would
I'm
like
not
to
ready to throw anything out here. right
Instead of
now.
having a, bringing on, I mean, obviously we got one, great, let's just take it with one and then let's talk about paying Jen more so that she can, actually wants to cover some additional hours.
Only
Or,
Jen, though.
sorry,
Only Jen.
And the rest of the crew behind there.
So I didn't think about having that for tonight.
Okay, all right.
But we'll go ahead with, to interview the one.
So,
Do you need a motion on that one?
I would need a motion
Yeah.
to interview for the district-wide sub-update, for the district-wide sub.
Are you motioning?
No, I'm asking for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Right. So Bruce has made a motion to interview for the district-wide sub-position. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Sheree. Is
Can
there
I
further-
ask a clarifying question? Is it for just the remainder of the 21-22 school year? We want
Yes.
that on record if that is the case.
I
And
amended.
then is it to start as soon as the person can be hired, or do we have an official start date you want?
I think depending on the interview process and what the principals and whoever is involved determine after the interview process, I will leave it up to the administrators to make the best choice. Does that sound agreeable to the rest of the board?
Just this year, the 21-22 school year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion by Bruce, a second by Sheree. And I think we've clarified everything that you needed to know. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. The WASB convention is next. I emailed out the 10 resolutions to you earlier this week. We are not going to go through each one of them. I trust that you read them and are prepared to act. Is there a motion to support the resolutions at the WASB convention? I'll make a motion to support the resolutions at the WASB convention. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Marge. Did anybody have any questions or comments about any of the 10 resolutions?
Another one I guess I would comment on or speak to is the involvement with a national organization.
Right.
So they made it very clear in the resolution that they don't necessarily need to be involved with the national school board,
Right.
but they do want to be involved with a national organization of some sort. Did I read that correct?
Actually, what they're actually changing, what our current bylaws are. Right now, it is in the bylaws that they will be associated with the National School Board Association, and they want to change that to less specific.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Mhm.
That's what I interpreted, thank you.
Okay? Did anybody else have a question or a comment on any of the resolutions? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. The next item is the compensation budget discussion. And is this going to be Dave leading this or Mark?
Well, thanks, Dave. The information that I sent out this week, Dave and I have talked about that because I think Bruce had the question about where are we at with, we talked about lifting the schedule up 1%. And just where we're sitting at right now, we think it's a good idea to do that right now. We are going to move forward with Victoria because we need to take a good hard look at our compensation model to make sure that we can hire and retain quality people. And every 3 to 5 years we have to go through this to get updated information. And it has to be done by someone from the outside. Dave's checked with his colleagues, I've checked with some of the people that are around, and our best bet is still Victoria. She does have a leg up on us because she knows us also, and she knows our system that we've implemented in, that we've had over the past. But for tonight, we would, the retro pay, again, having Jackie leave through a wrench in our business department, So we're delayed on the retro pay. If we go ahead with lifting the 1%, rather than having to do all the calculations twice, we would hold off on what we have right now and put it all together for the, are we looking at the January 1st payroll?
Well, if you do it all tonight, I would say yes. But you have to factor in that payroll has to be the bank by January 3rd, and the week before that is Christmas break, so like, it's gonna be it's gonna be a push, but that would be our goal. Rod and I talked about it today, so.
No, and no one's losing anything on retro, they just want to have it before Christmas.
Right, and a lot of people, they're budgeting week to week, and, for some people, waiting and getting half a year's pay retroactive may not be that big a deal, but for a lot of people it is.
Yeah, I thought we talked that this was gonna get the step in lane a lot. I mean, we approved that a long time, or when we approved the budget, I thought that was going in no matter what, and then the 1% we were gonna deal with later. I thought this was two separate.
Well, it was.
I'm disappointed that it hasn't been paid yet.
It was, but, if things remain constant, it'd have been done already. But there's a lot of work that goes on in that business office, and again, you throw clinkers like this, half of our office is turned over. And everyone's been doing everyone else's job to try and get us through this, and they've done a great job of that. Just if you say tonight, nope, we're gonna do retro right now, and get it done, we'll have it out by the next pay period. But then you probably won't get the 1% on the schedule for another month. Yeah, I mean, is that fair, Dave? Jody?
Because I believe the step and lane and retro was approved at the budget hearing, or budget approval?
In
October.
September.
So, and then the first part of November, we lost, part of our office, so. We can do it all on the 1st of January, if we lift the schedule tonight and, do everything all at once. But if it's going to be on the December 20th, regular session, that you make the motion to pass the schedule, then it's not going to, to lift the schedule, then it's not gonna make that 1st January payroll.
Hey, Dave, how does next year look with our ESSER money this year? So right now, from what I understand, when we approved that budget, we were right on budget. You had us right on our numbers. And now this adds another 100,000.
Right.
So we're getting an ESSER chunk of X.
Right.
And then next year we wouldn't get that, so now we'd be over the 100,000 plus the ESSER funds, or am I?
So, right, all else the same, and other things change, obviously. If you remember, we are using all of our ESSER 2 remaining funds, and then we used what was needed from our ESSER 3 estimated fund total for this year to be balanced. So there's an ESSER 3 portion we're expecting to be there again for next year. The deficit just in ESSER money is around $430,000 we're looking at right now. And again, that's everything else the same. This is the time of year where we talk quite a lot at admin about what is the plan for budget for next year. What are the approaches we want to consider that we would then provide to the board and say, here's some options. With the state budget known for next year, it really is this ESSER money. We also got the Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF, allocation from the governor announcement last week for our actual allocation. It had been mentioned before. I didn't really have any concept of amount or timing, but that was announced in Somerset. We get about $200,000 from that, so that's additional revenue that we hadn't expected. And that will be just received by the district. There's no strings attached like there are with some of the ESSER funds. So, long story short, yeah, there is a deficit within ESSER that that we talked about and that we're expecting. But there's still a fair amount of discussion to be had about how to address that.
I guess I just wouldn't wanna approve a 1%, put us 100,000 over. And we're all feeling good, and then next year we gotta say, okay, now we gotta cut 2 people. Because we're over budget, you know, 200,000 now, next year. You know,
Sure.
I mean, you're recommending, Mark, you're saying, yep, go forward with this, but I guess the numbers wise, Dave and Mark, I mean, is that?
So that would be how we've discussed in the past. We would propose something like limited filling of attrition, right? If teachers are retiring or resigning or other staff, limited filling. Another option that superintendents like and business managers don't like is you run a deficit for a year and you use up some of your fund balance. So there's different approaches to that. There's different things. You know, with the school district, there's a lot of fixed costs. There's not a lot of discretionary. So it really does come down to, are we going to be taking some funds out of fund balance? Are we going to be not filling some positions? What's the approach? We're also having big discussions regarding healthcare because that has been a bugaboo for us the last few years. That has been hitting us hard.
Yeah.
What has?
We're talking about
Oh, yes.
health insurance.
600,000.
What does it look like if we think about going self-funded? What does that mean? You know, so, and that's a big option, and that's a lot of discussion, and I wouldn't anticipate, you know, next year implementation. But we're really trying to approach some of these bigger cost items and say, how can we attack this from all sides? But as far as you're saying, yeah, right now, where we're sitting, this is obviously increasing costs. The reason that we're saying, you know, let's consider it, is because we said that we would do that. And so we always, you know, every few years, and it's been the third year, where the people at the top of the teacher salary schedule, for instance, they're staying the same. So this is the way to address that and give them an increase in pay. And it kind of goes along with another compensation study where that is the other way to address it and say, well, if it's a different model or if it's the same model and it's different different maximums or what have you, we're looking at, we have pay grades, and I'm getting a little off topic, but we have pay grades that are incredibly hard to fill because of the market. And you know, some of our lower pay grades need bumps, need to get bumped up, so we can't fill some position just because of pay. So, you know, it all kind of ties together. There's an approach, different options in how to address it once we get to that point for next year. And that needs discussion, but, you know, it's kind of, the recommendation is that we do it because we said we would. We always have options to present when we have projected deficits. That being said, yeah, the more conservative approach is hold on.
But your recommendation is do the 1%?
We said we would.
I don't think we ever said we would. I thought we were always saying we needed to get more information on the budget before we decided.
When we implemented McGrath, we said.
We have to increase it.
Okay, I
So
get it.
can you just give me like a 30-second overview, because I think probably for Lacey and I, you know, we both came out on the board after McGrath, right? Like, so what, you're talking about steps and lanes adjustment and then this 1%.
So
Can somebody catch me up real quick?
So you know, we have our first pay, you know, $44,000 for the first brand new person. Well, and you have the person at the top, they max out. Well, the person, you start the same every year. Well, you got to increase the whole grid 1% to keep up with.
Cost of living.
Yep, and you had discussed this.
Well, that's a
previously, correct?
discussion that
It's been going on for a while.
Ever since there's pay grades, you get stopped at the top because there's no place for you to go. So philosophically is you either take the point, that's what the job pays and that's it. Or you take the philosophy that, you know what, no, we want our, you know, we want to keep and retain, you know, because most of the times, when people get to the top, they're getting closer to the end of their career. You know, they are. And I believe that here you've traditionally had additional monies go on the top.
Yes, and that is another option. Rather than giving 1% to every cell, we could give a percentage to just that top rate, because everybody else is getting step movement, and that's been done in the past as well. Because you are looking at having Victoria come in and do another study, and then, you know, based on what she presents, that might be a % per cell increase there.
And she gives us options. You know, I think we had like 3 or 4 different options last time on just different grids that we wanted to use. The thing that I'm curious about is what these districts are doing outside of the traditional step and lane grid that is what's drawing people away, these incentives, classifying differently and bonus situations, because that's what's drawing some of our top people away. You know, they can go somewhere else and, you know, pick up an extra, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 a year. That's a huge impact.
As I'm sitting here thinking about it more, you know, if we're gonna spend $100,000 to increase everybody, and, you know, we've just seen, you know, the bottom of Shannon's, you know, instructional coach or assistant principal or something, you know, which is that same price as that, are we better served adding that one person or giving 1% to everybody? I don't know.
So as discussed here, this is 1% to everybody across
Yeah.
the board, not just top.
From
everybody.
support staff to
1%.
to teachers to admin to
Everyone, just on every pay grid we have, it just lifts everything 1%.
And when's the last time there was a
1920 school year.
1920? There's been no adjustment since.
for the base, but every year everybody gets a step.
Yes, step, right.
But like-
Unless you're on the top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the starting wage hasn't moved, or, you know.
Yep, since 1920.
To the max you can get, so.
So I'm torn because I know what it's been like hiring staff. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if we had the highest pay in the state. I mean, there's a shortage. There's a teacher shortage. There's an employee shortage. And on the other hand, I want to make sure that whatever we do, we're fiscally responsible and it's sustainable.
And is the recommendation from your office that it is?
Well, it's that we have different ways to approach next year's budget.
You feel confident with next year?
We do have a fund balance, we can go red if we.
You know, we've got, you know, school finances, especially now, you know, I wish we could predict what we're gonna get and where we're gonna be at. But if you just theoretically here, you know, if your budget stays the same and just because of the cost of doing business is going up, we're always gonna have this issue where, you know, are we going back for more money to the community or are we cutting? You know, sometimes, you know, people can cut themselves into paying more by, you know, cannibalizing their system. And I think there's been some of that done, you know, almost in every district. You just keep cutting, and then all of a sudden, where are you at? Until you get an influx of money. You know, we're sitting with a good fund balance. You can weather this storm for a number of years if you wanted to run it down, but that's not good practice anyway. And when you're in, you know, we've had some slight declining enrollment. And, you know, one thing I keep saying to our administrative team, you know, when they say we need this, this, and this, say, you know what, with our enrollment slightly declining, you can't keep adding bodies because that does not end well for anyone. So how do we reuse the resources that we have? And that's when we start talking about instructional coaches and things like that. How do we, you know, it's like playing a game of hearts. You know, you want to short suit yourself a little bit in a suit layer. Okay, you know what, we've got some low class sizes. maybe we make some of those people instructional coaches, zero sum to the game, but you increase class size. There's give and take on all this, because we just can't keep throwing bodies, you know, at this, you know, the situation. You know, and if we don't play the compensation game, we're gonna lose our people. I mean, plain and simple, we've lost enough of them. People are mobile today. So, again, as I said in my note, I see that 100,000 lifting a schedule is a good investment at this point in time, but to guarantee that it's not gonna have a long-term impact is, I would never make that guarantee, because I know how this is played, because it always comes back to the state's not funding us and our costs are going up. And so there we are with, you said this one, well, right now I say we can survive it. And the impact on our, versus our, Dave, you jump in this, the impact of that towards what we have for a fund balance, you could run a negative fund balance for a while if it's not too big. So, you know, we've been building fund balance for a while until this COVID thing hit.
Can Victoria, I mean, is she gonna be able to come up with options of bonus type things, or, I mean, is that in
Well, that's
her
what
realm of
that's what
things?
I'm looking for, and that's what started this conversation, was that these other districts are offering, you know, the reclassifying people in different positions, and, you know, our neighboring districts, if this is this type of position, well, we even have that hard to fill lane, and we've used that. But what I was looking at also was, you know, incentive, you know, for these people that are blowing it off the charts in their rooms, you know, what's their incentive?
Are
to
80% middle schoolers?
Depends how you figure that 80%.
That's right. I bet someone would
You know,
figure out
but
real
that's
quick.
what got me going on the incentive pieces here. You know, what's keeping our best and brightest from not, you know, bugging out of here? Well,
And that was a big one, just, we circled back to it, 26 new hires or something, I don't know if that was just at the high school, Shannon, or just.
That was just at the high school.
But like, when Victoria did this, I remember us looking at the number, and it was minimal, like, we had, like, we were higher than everybody, remember that chart, it was like, average person here was.
Oh, because we had
We had a super long
experienced staff.
retained up through like 18 or 17, 18, we were like.
Look at what you lost
number
over the
one.
last 5 years here, as far as people, you know, people that have left at the end of their game, you know,
Yeah, but that was I remember that was Victoria, I remember bringing that up, or pretty sure she did, but I remember that was a sticking point too.
You know, and then, you know, you always have that flex between retiring senior people on the schedule and bringing in new. You know, you've got that cost difference there too, and that, we factor that into the situation every year too. What's the gap there?
So listen, do you want to take action on this tonight so that they can make that adjustment if it passes?
Well,
I'll make a motion to add 1% to the grid.
And I'll second. I was gonna make a motion.
all right, well, you beat me. Bruce has made a motion to add 1% to the grid and make the adjustments to payroll to take care of steps and lanes. And Matt has seconded it. For the discussion part, I would just like to throw out the idea to keep in mind, you know, I'm not against what you are motioning, but I'm wondering if it might have been more effective to put 1.5% at the ends of the lanes rather than 1% on every cell. And because Victoria McGrath is going to be coming in and doing another study anyway.
I hear you, and I think with her coming in, we're gonna have so many discussions on this later that when she came last time with the multiple options, I think we're gonna be able to kinda, and I think us having a better understanding this next time, I think we can maybe fit it a little better.
You and I.
Well, but I mean, maybe we can help discussions too, if people have seen it, and, you know, Mark and Dave have been involved. You know, I don't know how much they had been involved before.
Well, and looking at, we're saying we want to keep our staff, and we're talking cost of living. Well, cost of living has gone way more than 1% this year for not just the people at the high end, it's gone up for everybody.
No, but the other people are making steps.
Right, but still not to even catch up with the cost of living right now. I mean, in all honesty, and we're saying at every board meeting, we've been talking about appreciating our staff and doing it. I mean, I think exactly to your point, I think right now to look at it and then let's get creative. If we're coming to that point next year, then looking at, okay, what are our class sizes? If they're going down, how can we make those adjustments? I think by doing 1%, we're not saying we have to cut all these teachers next year. I think it's very feasible from your explanation. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Sheree, did you want to add anything?
No.
Marge? All right. So we have a motion on the table by Bruce, a second by Matt. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously.
How much overtime would it take to get this out?
Or
What's your next pay
She doesn't have any more time in her days.
The next
You guys
pay
are-
period is December 20th.
The 20th?
Yeah.
So, that's a Monday? You have to
Put
back
me on
up,
the spot.
everything has to be to the bank, you know, like 2 days before that,
Yep.
so probably, I would have to ask Rod, but I mean, it would take a lot.
And this is retro to the beginning of the school year, correct?
Or July 1,
Okay, all
so,
right.
yeah,
Anything from.
contract year or a
Contract, yeah.
teacher contract, when, you know, if it's, yeah. So, and then they get like a sheet from me saying, here's where your new placement is, here's where, you know, that type of stuff with the payroll. So it is quite a bit of work. So I can ask Rod tomorrow and I'll send you an update if I think it's even remotely possible, Bruce.
I'm just,
I mean,
They're gonna get it out.
I want it as much as anybody.
Right, yeah,
You know? So, but there's only so many hours and we also have to train in 2 new people in this office,
So Jody, when you send Bruce that update, would you?
I'll send it to everybody, I promise. I promise.
All right, the next item on the budget is the purpose of budget presentations. Every year, the administrators present their budgets to the rest of the board, and that begins in January to help board members understand how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. So before the administrators started working on their presentations for January, I thought it might be useful for the board to have a discussion on what is in those presentations so that the board can gain the most knowledge possible. So just a brief discussion about that, Mark?
Yeah, so we started this, I don't know, a couple years ago, Dave? When, you know, we just got a lot of questions when we're adopting the budget about different things in the budget. So we went to a model where each department gives a presentation on their budget, so when these bills come up or things, you look at them, you go, oh yeah, I've heard that before, here's what this is about. And then it really expedites the process, and they don't have to explain a couple different times during the year. So you know, Trish will talk about just what's in her $20 million budget that she has every year.
nice.
Kidding, yeah. But then you'll know, what assessments are coming out of there, what curriculum pieces are, and what they're doing, how much of it's directed to strategic plan initiatives and things like that. So you get a blast of it, so you don't have to really go back when the bills come up or come through, that, oh, what was this for? So it just saves you time and a good time to ask questions.
And the presentations are also attached to the agenda, so if later in the year something comes up about a certain department, they're there for us to go back and look at.
I think it's a good opportunity as well for departments. I always encourage them, and there's limited departments that this would apply to, but if they have an idea about things that they have upcoming in the next year or future years that may require additional funds, additional budget allocation, this is the time to let the board know this is coming down, like these are things we should be thinking about and we'll be possibly requesting a bigger allocation for that purpose. And the one that comes to mind off the top of my head was the one-to-one computer initiative. Trish brought that to the department budget presentation, and she said, this is what we're looking at, this is what we're considering, here's some costs. And then we continued to talk about that allocation and then approved it. but it was the first time to hear it, and that's kind of getting back to what Mark's saying, where if you hear some of these things more, then it makes sense as you're going, and you're not saying, wait a minute, but what are we talking about? How does this fit in? So I think it's useful for a number of reasons.
So some of the things I'd like to see in the budget presentation is, for example, what your budget was last year, what it is this year. I don't even know if you have the projections for next year yet, probably not, but a comparison so we can see what's going on with the budget and then where it's distributed and percentages and, you know, for example, with curriculum, your budget, CIA, does 50% of your budget go toward testing that's required by the state? You know, whatever that is, the big pieces that you think are important. Did anybody else have any ideas or thoughts? There have been times in the past when we've had budget presentations where there was no dollar amount at all provided, and it would be nice to have dollars. All right. If there's nothing further, then the calendar for 22-23. Typically in January, usually, the calendar for the next school year is presented to the board for approval. I'm also on the CISA 11 board, and at our last meeting, Jerry Walters, the agency administrator, suggested, and perhaps you've heard this as well, Trish, in your CIA meetings, he suggested that neighboring school districts coordinate professional development days so that CISA could be providing training to multiple districts at the same time, especially after the last couple of years when staff has not been allowed to attend out-of-district training because we didn't have any subs. So have you heard this from CISA as well?
No, I haven't heard it from CISA. We have made that attempt several times in the Middle Border Conference, and including St. Croix Falls and a few of the other outlying schools. It's very tricky. We can agree on Ed Camp Day as a Middle Border Conference, and even that, we've had districts that have stepped away because they have strategic plans or local initiatives that they cannot give up one day of their professional release time. We've also tried, New Richmond and Somerset have tried to coordinate our days. There's a cultural element that comes with those PD days where we looked at our calendar and tried to keep it consistent for our parents, either tied to a vacation weekend or the third Friday, and then the second half of the year we switched to Mondays based on feedback from our staff and from our families. New Richmond always does Mondays, and that is all we're gonna do, you know that. So there's this cultural piece that comes with the district. We would love to coordinate tighter because, for example, Study Sync, our ELA curriculum, is used in St. Croix Falls. It's also used in other surrounding areas. Envision is now being looked at. Our new ELA curriculum, Amory, is going through the adoption process at the same time. It saves us a lot of time and builds a local network where our teachers can use as resources. So I have not heard from CISA. It is something that is valuable if we can coordinate with the support from the SUPs from the area, at least a few districts that have commonalities.
So I just wanted to bring that up so that you would consider it in building the calendar for next year. Was there anything else anybody wanted to add to that? All right, then, the next item is policy updates. There are 8 of them. I sent out an email about it. Every one of the policies is attached along with notes. Neola additional language is in green, and strikeouts are in red, and what the policy committee has recommended for language changes or additions is in blue, with the strikeouts in yellow, so that you can differentiate between what the policy committee is recommending and what came from Neola. So everything is right there, and they were pretty minimal. So unless there's any questions, we can bring these policies to the regular session. Anybody have any questions or on any of the policies at this time?
Pay attention.
No?
Okay. Not much to it. Thanks, team.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, the next item on the agenda, topics for action. We have the addition of a sick leave bank here. It would be under A, Roman numeral 1. Would anybody care to make a motion for the topics for action?
I will also have one, just, I guess, question. I know Mark just stepped out, but is this something with the sick bank request, does that have to go to the board each time? That district can't have a policy that they can allow that?
I mean, we could at some point change the policy, but current policy says that it comes to the board for approval.
Okay. For any employees to donate sick time?
Right.
Right, okay.
Right.
So I'll make a motion just on 16A11, just for that? Or do you want to do all of them?
It's up to you. You can do one at a time, or you can do all of them.
I'll do them all unless somebody has any discussion on anything else.
I didn't hear anything.
I'll make a motion to approve 16 topics for action, A, personal update, 1 and 2, B, the referendum invoice, and then the additional 16A personal update for the approval of sick bank request.
All right, so Matt has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and Bruce has seconded. Any further discussion on the topics for action? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Once around the table, Bruce, would you like to start tonight?
Yeah, I don't know, I got something and then I didn't. So, no, I don't think I have anything.
If you think of it later,
Good.
I'll come back to
I
you.
feel like I have something.
Sheree, do you have anything?
Jen, first of all, I want to just say thank you for all the hard work you do with that program. My daughter was a beneficiary of it the first year. And what a profound impact that had on her direction with college and her ability to really think outside the box and see things from a big perspective. So I believe that was a huge catalyst in her success now with her career. So thank you for what you're doing. I absolutely love this stuff, and maybe we can get some down at a retail location in Somerset. Wouldn't that be kind of fun to expand their offerings? Also, Matt, I really just appreciate you holding our board to a respectful level. Sighing and eye rolling is not acceptable, and I would like to know when we can get our board retreat follow-up set, because that needs to happen.
Okay. Lacey?
I don't think, thank you. You know what, Roxanne put in her resignation after I had the once around the table. So I wasn't able to say, but if you're watching, Roxanne, she's going to be missed, and I really appreciated her when she did serve, so thank you to her.
Mark?
Nope.
Matt?
I have nothing either, other than thank you for the store. You know, the high school I went to, we had a student-run business, and it was a huge benefit to people, so I totally get, I came from that, so thank you for the work you're doing. Nothing else?
On the personal update, John Revard is resigning from 25 years of coaching middle school track, and I'd like to thank him for his many years of service to that program. And I'm wondering if the board could hear from our new reading specialist, instructional coach, on how that position is going, how the time is being spent, things that she's seen as areas of strength, areas that we need improvement, how often she's able to get into classrooms and visit, what's the follow-up on that, how is that instructional coaching actually going, because that's a new position for us. Bruce, did you think of it?
No.
All right.
Thanks to the admin for putting all that information together and presenting tonight. I know that's not fun, so thanks for doing that. Appreciate it.
I will make a motion then to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851C to consider the employment, compensation, or performance evaluation of the district administrator.
Thanks,
Is there
Jen.
a second?
I second.
Thank you, Marge. We need a roll call vote for this. Last time I started with Marge, so Matt?
Yes.
Myself, yes?
Yes.
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 And Marge?
I gotta take notes now? It's effective now?
All right, so it is unanimous. And we, at 26, are moving into closed session.
I don't think you guys can take any